Nintendo Switch is poised to have a huge holiday season given their coming lineup, but there are some other games that intrigue us as well, Sir Gabriel. We've got a little list here that we wanted to go through because, frankly, there's a lot that we are loving for this fall season. It's the best time of year to be a gamer. It's been my favorite time of year since I was probably about 13. Did you know, Gabe, that back in the day, even like before the YouTube era, that because of my eBay tactics, which sounds shady, but I promise it was completely legit, I played like 80 to 100 games a year.
I had a similar. I never counted. I don't know if it was 80 to 100.
I love counting.
I've always played every major release, at least a little bit. So yeah, even going back to before the YouTube days, I figured it out. There was ways, even just trading at GameStop or doing things with friends, like splitting it. One of you finishes it, then you hand it off. There's a lot of ways to play these games. And
you could Redbox the orange box.
Well, back then Redbox wasn't a thing.
Dang it. All right. Well, anyhow, there's a good lineup of games, and we just want to discuss them. Let us know if you're excited for anything non-Nintendo going forward. If you're a double console dandy, or maybe you're a PC Switch performer, we'd love to hear about it. I'm going to kick it off, Gabe, with shockingly my most anticipated title on this list, which is Fallout 76. It hits November 14th. I'm not the biggest Fallout fan, but I think the things they're doing and converting it to an online game, I think the ways that they're implementing PvP in particular are so smart. And what I mean by that is how they are limiting the negative impact of griefers and trolls, and how they're creating an ecosystem where you can function as an individual within a multiplayer setting. Todd Howard's a master.
Yeah, I love that we're actually going to get a chance to talk about games that aren't necessarily on Switch. First of all, I just wanted to mention that. To me, that's like so cool. We don't do that very often. But yeah, Fallout 76 is without a doubt the second most anticipated game for me for the rest of the year. We'll talk about the first one in a little bit, but yeah, Todd Howard is a genius. What this game reminds me of, though, is the fact that we sat there and looked at a bobblehead on Twitch for hours and hours for no reason whatsoever, and people thought that it was just going to be a Fallout 3 remaster that was going to make its way to Switch. Inevitably, there was no Switch connection, unfortunately, but we got something that is presumably much better, which is sort of an evolution of what Fallout has been, and one that I'm looking forward to very, very much.
Yeah, I'm hoping also that this is sort of the game that maybe gets me into more of these like online server style survive and create, but also with some linearity and missions type game. I never was into Rust. I know, Gabe, you dumped a ton of hours into that, as well as others of that style. Yeah, and that's never been my thing. So maybe this one, given its more structured approach, like kind of excited to build my base, even though I hated it in Fallout 4. Kind of excited to run around with you, Gabe, and steal your nuclear codes. Kind of excited to go on missions by myself, and then how they've implemented the perk system with these card packs. I'm a sucker for cards. It's just lining up to be really cool. Hopefully it turns out. We got the beta next month, and then the full release in November.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's an exciting time to be a fan of Fallout for sure.
Taking us to your top title, let's just get this one out the way. That's Red Dead Redemption 2. I think this game is, as weird as this sounds, going under the radar because, yes, people are excited for a new Rockstar joint. Yes, people are excited for Red Dead. They just announced that, hey, like the online is going to come with a beta a little bit after launch. But if you read between the lines of the previews, it sounds like this game is legitimately evolving video games in a way that it's like kind of hard to describe, but they're saying that the NPCs react to the world and react to you in almost like an unprecedented lifelike way.
Rockstar always pushes boundaries of storytelling and world, the whole ecosystem of what they have going on. It's always really, really good. And I love the fact that they are putting off the multiplayer. They did something similar with Grand Theft Auto 5. They want you to experience their game because so much work goes into these things that it would be unfortunate that just because, the times we live in where people just don't touch that and go straight into multiplayer. I'm glad that they're going to avoid that. I am totally behind the move here as far as, hey, play our game first. Then, a month or so later, we'll give you some multiplayer and dive into that. But yeah, they continue to do amazing stuff over there at Rockstar. They don't put games out very often. And yeah, it's like, I guess, sort of under the radar, but only because everybody's going to get it and everybody already knows that they're going to get it. And this game alone is the reason why this fall might be a little lighter than most other months as far as releases. Companies are trying to avoid this game by any means necessary So yeah, this is going to do absolutely huge. I can't wait. It's probably going to be a Game of the Year contender. So very, very excited for that.
Yeah, I don't mean the game is under the radar. I just mean maybe the impact it has, like somehow even with its gargantuan status, is still being like underappreciated in some way, just because it does sound like it's going gangbusters in what it could accomplish. I loved Red Dead 1. It's the rare Rockstar game that I played all the way through pretty quickly. Beat that one way back in the day, early YouTube days. One of the first games I probably played on YouTube, like year one of my channel. I actually used a very cringeworthy Red Dead Redemption funny moments montage as an application portfolio piece for my USC game design program application.
How'd that go?
I got in.
Look,
I got in. It's a pretty elite program. So
yeah, Red Dead provided one of the like seminal like moments in video games, right? That ending. That
I don't like it as much as everyone.
It's absolutely phenomenal. But I don't know, just in case no one's ever played that, because we are like, this is a Nintendo channel, so maybe some people here have never played it, so we won't talk about it very much, I guess. But
right.
Great ending, great story. So I even didn't mind the parts in the Mexico parts that everybody kind of hated. I didn't mind that as much either.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you might be a little biased, but no, I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited to invest in the world, and sort of similar to Fallout 76, like how it's doing a like world building and like you're living there and your camp upgrades and how that sort of just the permanence of you in the world, I think will be really cool to see. And if they are able to legitimately push forward, I saw Jeff Keighley mentioning on Twitter, like they're doing insane things over there. So enough about Red Dead. Everyone's going to buy it. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Let's go for another title that's coming out later this year, Gabe, and one that I definitely think deserves the under the radar label. That would be Darksiders 3. It's November 27th. This franchise was kind of on the ropes for a while, and then it got brought back, and here it is.
Yeah, at some point we didn't know if we would ever get a Darksiders game again, just because of studio closures and things like that. Darksiders 1 is my perfect version of an adult-like Zelda game. The exploration and puzzles in that, on top of the combat, made that like one of my favorite games on Xbox 360. It's long as well. Darksiders 2, I didn't put as many hours into it. For some reason, sounds funny. Me and Death didn't connect.
Well, it was also a different type of game. It eschewed the Zelda style and went way more like action loot combat game.
Exactly, and I'm hoping that this brings back some of those puzzle elements a little bit more. I don't know how I feel about the protagonist this time around, and I don't know why no one's even mentioning that this game is coming out. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets delayed because of Red Dead, honestly, even though it is like pretty close to release. But this is one that I'm gonna be looking out for. How do you feel about the new protagonist with the new weapons? And the look isn't super different. That's one thing that does sort of bother me a little bit. Just visually, it's not very distinct from the others, but gameplay, it does look like it's unique.
I think it's a pretty cool idea to keep switching the characters up. I've always liked that from the start, that each game was going to differentiate itself in that way. And like you said, it'll be cool to see where they lean gameplay, or if it's a hybrid. Personally, I know this is not popular, but I like 2 more than 1. I don't know. I like the speed and the fluidity of the combat in 2. I was a little bit not into the slower, sort of old school Zelda formula of the first, although it did bring in its own twist. I don't know. Like, this is a game that, has sort of that B tier vibe, and so maybe it does feel a little bit antiquated on the heels of Red Dead Redemption, on the heels of Fallout 76, and preceding another combat heavy game that we're gonna move here to in a minute. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna check it out. I like the main character. Switch it up. But I feel like this is one that could go either way. Like, if it reviews a 5 out of 10 or it reviews an 8.5 out of 10, they're both plausible.
Oh, I mean, I don't know that a 5 out of 10 is very plausible. I mean, they don't have a history of having these games be like that bad. You're talking like mediocrity if you're getting a 5 out of 10. And just mention, you said the word Switch. I wish this was on Switch. It feels like it feels like out of all these on the list, this is one that could have maybe like made its way over. But alas, It isn't happening. Still excited for it.
All right, so let's go to 2019, early 2019, because 2018, like, honestly, some of the biggest games are Nintendo titles. Pokemon, Smash, those don't fear Red Dead, but a lot of games did. And so we have a nice slate early in the year, Q1 of 2019. And let's talk DMC5, just because that is the most parallel to Darksiders 3, bringing in a bunch of playable characters, bringing in crazy style, very cool flair, and in spite of the microtransaction fiasco, it's looking really cool.
Yeah, just the combat, right? It's like tried and true, and this is a mainline game, not like the DMC game that I actually liked quite a bit, but it's going to be good to have Dante back, and Devil May Cry has like the stylistic side of it that not a lot of action games like currently have, with just the music, the entire vibe, the pace, right? You were talking about the gameplay in Darksiders, right, and how you prefer 2 just because it was a little quicker. This is like that on steroids, really, and
right.
There's so much more, like the combos you can get going. Have you ever seen somebody that's just amazing at Devil May Cry, like the stuff they can do with the combos and chaining everything? Like, it's absolutely insane. So some cool boss fights, cool visuals, and a probably super insane story as well, right?
Yeah, I've played them. I actually really liked the Ninja Theory DMC. I thought that was cool. Inconsistency of franchise and character aside, I liked what that did. I'm no expert at it, but I do obviously like the Bayonettas, the Devil May Cries. Those are really fun, and I love multiple characters, and this seems to be pushing sort of the craziness and the chaos, which will be really cool. Let's move to another Capcom game, which will be the wondrous, in your opinion, Resident Evil 2 Remake, January 25th.
We actually played this at E3. Right next to each other. I remember Resident Evil 2. I have fond memories of it. I don't know if you do. And what they've done to this game, the facelift that it has, is nothing short of stunning to me. I actually thought it just visually looked really, really good. You weren't that impressed with it. For some reason, I think it's because I have like that nostalgia for it and I remember it so much. So seeing just how different this is and all the puzzle elements, we played the exact same demo, right? I believe I got a little bit further than you, but it's because I have some background in the game and you don't. But I love that it doesn't handhold you. I love that, and I know this is one of the things you don't like. The gameplay is still like slow. It feels the way I remember it feeling like, with it like looking the way I expect a game to look like in 2018/2019. So right. that to me is something very, very special with the game. I'm sure you would like some gameplay that was a little bit more fluid, a little quicker and more precise, but I think the slow lumbering nature is kind of what adds to the tension, especially in some of those more confined spaces.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I don't have the nostalgia from the original, never played it, so I'm at a disadvantage there, and I loved 7 so much. I thought the leaps forward that it took were so incredible, and I get that this is playing off of nostalgia and that this is not like, their next main game, but it just feels weird as someone who loved that direction of last year's title to then do, like, it's just hard for me to get excited for this. Like you mentioned, it is slow, it is lumbering, and it is stop and pop and tight corridors, tight hallways, as opposed to the more roaming boss nature of 7 and some of the really cool puzzle mechanics that they implemented there, some of the bringing Resident Evil up to speed. Now we're slowing things way down to the past. I don't know. It's one that I was shocked won like game of the show at E3. Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, glad for you and everyone else who's excited to venture back into that world. But yeah, on this one, I'm not seeing the hype at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. Let us know what you think about this one in particular in the comments, because you and I are so like off on it.
Yeah, separated by a gigantic gap that we're going to fill with another, in theory, giant game, which would be Anthem. This is BioWare's take on Destiny. It is also a very, very important game for the studio, given the... Can we call Andromeda disaster? Can we call sort of their recent developments disastrous? Based on where they used to be and how highly thought of and highly anticipated BioWare joints were, what they've done, kind of a bit of a bummer as of late. EA, trying to get back in good mental mind share with fans. Anthem looks cool, but it hasn't shown a lot.
I struggle a little bit with games like this. Like, Destiny is something that I'm going to kind of connect here, where like it's a constant like online world, and I don't mind games being constantly online. It's just like feels like BioWare in particular does like stories so well, and they do characters so well, that I'm worried that some of that is going to get lost in the pure structure of what this game is. Like, right. I'm sure it's going to be a really fun time to play with friends and everything, but the way that they did some of those like side missions in Mass Effect, right? Like, that's what I like BioWare for. And I'm worried that maybe that's not going to be in the game enough. But hey, like everything else, it's going to get a beta. We're going to get our hands on it, and I'm sure it'll be a good time. It's just going to be an adjustment, I think, just because it's so different from everything else they've done.
And they have claimed that they're trying to really change the way NPCs are used in these games and to utilize them in some of the more solo moments to give you that story, to convey the things that BioWare traditionally does so well. It looks cool. I like the fact that you're always flying around. I like that you can kind of change the different suits on the fly. I really love the mechanics and the moment-to-moment action of Destiny. I don't get into the whole meta and the overall weapon hunting and light level gaining, but if they're able to be more interesting here and provide what I would feel be more rewarding rewards, it could be something that you devote a ton of time to. Again, the early part of next year is just jammed with time and games that are going to take our time. Another one on the same day is Days Gone, February 22nd. This is a Sony exclusive that kind of just like fell under the pile of properties far more exciting and appealing. You had Spider-Man, of course. You have The Last of Us 2 releasing next year. You've got Death Stranding. You have a lot of games that kind of just overwhelm Days Gone, but I still think Days Gone has a lot to share and a lot of value there. I played 2 different demos at E3 this past year. I loved it. I mean, to me, it is a Last of Us style game with more emphasis probably on combat. You're motorcycling around a big open world and utilizing the environment, the weather, and all these different obstacles to take down crazy zombies, and then in some instances take down hundreds of them. That was sort of my favorite thing, was this giant scenario of like hundreds of zombies and me running them through a course of chaos to kill off the entire horde.
I just think it's so tough to stand out in what Sony is doing because they apparently don't miss. Even their like lowest profile release, right? Detroit Become Human, you still loved it quite a bit. I know a lot of people still really enjoyed it. It's still reviewed well for the most part. But when you have things like Spider-Man, like that are just doing better than anything you've ever done before, same with God of War. And then down the pipe, you have Kojima's next big game. And then it's just so impossible to compete with that stuff. So for something like Days Gone, which is a brand new like property, right? And not to even mention The Last of Us Part 2. Like, this game needs to be different, but I'm not afraid quality-wise whatsoever. I feel like this is going to be like right up there.
Yeah, it doesn't have any sort of like high-profile thing to go off of, right? Like, even Detroit being a like you mentioned, like sort of a lower hit title, it had David Cage and sort of the allure there. This one, it feels a little bit like a knockoff, which I get, but it still seems to have value. And Sony, as you mentioned, you know, if you're not named the Order 1886, one of the two, you know, Horizon, Spider-Man, Bloodborne, they don't miss. God of War is going to most likely be Game of the Year. I still think this one is going to bring a lot of value, and it's releasing at least, you know, 7, 8, 9 months before Last of Us 2. I would give it a chance. It's a different take on a story, right? It's a little bit more gritty. Gabe, I feel like you really get into sort of the gruffness and the attitude of these characters. So I'm still ecstatically excited for February 22nd.
Same here.
All right, let's talk one more game, and this one could end up being the best of them all. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is From Software's new epic, and it is evolving the Dark Souls formula outside of that series and trying to take their talents and do something a bit different. I've played it. It's near perfect, Gabe.
I've seen your gameplay, if that counts.
Yeah.
It looks very exciting. It's a drastic departure from what From Software has been doing, and playing through, but playing a little bit of Dark Souls Remastered on Nintendo Switch through the network test that's happening. I thought about Sekiro. I was like, wow, like, just a change in speed alone is something that's so wholly different that it's probably going to be difficult for me to get used to. Because I stop and think about the developers a lot when I'm like playing this game. I'm like, okay, who made this? Same thing with Anthem, right? Like, oh, this is a BioWare game. This feels nothing like BioWare game. And this,
it still feels From, though. It still feels From.
And that's what I was going to say with this. Like, even if it doesn't like feel like From, it maintains so much of what they do so well, such as like the combat, right? They do combat so well, and by all accounts, the combat in this looks amazing. But now you have some insane traversal as well, right, and stealth tactics, things like that just weren't in Dark Souls.
It's like they've opened up their playbook. Like, okay, whatever parameters Dark Souls set, great, they executed on those so well, but now we're going to jump above, literally, the playing field, and we're going to have that be an avenue to attack differently, to move differently. There's just a lot more speed, as you mentioned. The enemies, I feel, are a little bit more daunting because they seem, from what I played, less pattern-based. Obviously, you're still going to have your pattern foes, but there's an emphasis on these mid-bosses, and there's an emphasis on duking out with them in these very dramatic one-on-ones. You have these huge monster characters that are chasing you through these levels, and they claim that cat and mouse is going to continue throughout the game. I guess my biggest concern with this one is how much variety do you get out of the samurai shogun aesthetic? You know, Dark Souls and Bloodborne really just ooze that medieval and then gothic vibe, and sort of took everything they could and created these creepy villains in these very moody atmospheres. Can you do that with this sort of setting? Will they be able to kind of step beyond what we've seen from samurai games in the past? I hope they're able to.
Yeah, sure hope so.
So that is a whole lot of games, and I'll lastly say that Sekiro controls brilliantly. It feels so fluid, even, a solid whatever it was, 7-8 months before release. Like, that game, it's intense, and they promise a difficulty level higher than anything that they have done thus far. Terrifying, but this game lineup is not terrifying. A ton of good ones, and we'd love to hear what you're excited for. Obviously, we know that you're pumped for the coming Switch lineup, and as are we, but is there anything else beyond that either you heard about here or that we missed that maybe you're excited for? Lots of great games. Let us know your favorites in the comments down below and why. It's always important for us to know why you're excited for these, and we'd love to hear it. Gabe, let's each pick one here that we're most excited for on this list.
Red Dead.
Fallout 76.
Perfect.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
On we go. Off to the races. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch, and rarely, occasionally, sometimes, other cool games. Follow us on Twitter and Discord if you'd like. We got links in the description below. And for myself and Gabe, until next time, thank you so much for watching. We love you a lot. Switch Force, out.